Right, good morning everybody. My name's Jeanne Willis and I'm an author and I've written over 400 books, which is quite a lot. I've been doing it a very long time, since I was about your age. How old are you? You're 5. Yeah, I've been writing since I was 5. And lots of my stories are about animals, and this is one of the strange pets I once had. But before I tell you about that, I'm going to show you some pictures of the funny animals that I've kept in the past, and I've still got lots at home. So if you look over here, those were my very first pets. Do you know what they are? Anybody know what they are? Do you know? What do they remind you of? That might give you a clue. No? That's right. They're stick insects, that's right. And these ones are from India. And if you look right at the corner, can you see those little brown dots? What do you think they might be? They've got a little white spot on the end. What do you think they might be? Anybody know? It is eggs. And I've got a little story to tell you about those eggs, because my dad got me some stick insects when I was a little girl. And they laid hundreds of eggs. So I put them in a cupboard and I waited and waited, but they didn't seem to do anything. I forgot all about them. And then one morning I went upstairs and my mum was in the bathroom and she went, "What on earth's all this?" So I went into the bathroom, and all over the toilet seat, all over the toilet roll, on the windows and in the bath, hundreds and hundreds of tiny baby stick insects. Because I'd forgot to put the lid on, and they all hatched and they went into the bathroom. And my mum said, "Well, what are we going to do with them? Because if we just go like that to collect them, they're going to hurt their legs." So I called my sister Chrissy and we got tiny paintbrushes and we went round and we let the stick insects crawl onto the brush, and then we blew them into a jar so we didn't hurt them, and we saved them, and they all grew up and had babies of their own one day. So they were all safe. But how silly not to put the lid on the jar, eh? Now, let's see my next pet. Can you see what that is? Not a fox, look closely. Not a guinea pig, anybody know? Yes, it's a rat, but it's not like a horrible, dirty rat. That's a fancy rat. That's actually a Russian one. And she's called Lucia. And she really, really loved children. So I used to, you don't like the look of her, do you? But she was gorgeous. And she did like people. You know, they're as clever as dogs. So I used to take her to school, and I used to take my children into the playground first thing in the morning. And I used to put Lucia on my shoulder. And when she saw the children, she used to get so excited. She used to do a funny little thing. What do you think a rat does when it's happy? Any ideas? What might it do? Do you know, they've proved that rats can laugh. When they're happy, they do a little chuckle and they almost smile. And also they vibrate their bodies and they grind their teeth. And that's how you know when a rat's happy. Oh no, never angry. If you went into the room where she was, she'd come running towards you and hop onto you. I haven't got her anymore. They don't live very long, unfortunately. But she was really useful when I was writing, because I had to write a novel about rats. And I used to take her upstairs to my attic where I worked. And if I wanted to describe her tail or remember what her eyes looked like or something, I could get her out of my apron pocket and have a look and go, "Oh yes, she's got fluffy face and almond-shaped eyes and a lovely pink tail with bristles on so she can grip." And I could use that to help me describe rats in my story. So I always use my animals to help me with my books. Right, so that's Lucia. Let's see who's next. Right. I love beetles. They're such wonderful things. They're almost built like robots. You wait till you see one in a minute and you'll go, "Oh, that's so cute." I'm showing you my disgusting ones first. So this is Brutus, and he is actually, can you see him? He is the biggest beetle in the world. And he's so strong, he can lift something 850 times more than his own weight. So it's like one elephant picking up 850 elephants on its back. And do you see that log he's on? That's where he lives, in his great big terrarium. That log's about that big. Now, I went in there one day and he was underneath the log like a little strong man on his back legs, back 4 legs, lifting this log above his head. I don't know why he was doing it. Now, he was called Brutus, and I've got one here. He's not alive anymore. This isn't Brutus, this is an example of another one. But this is what they actually look like. Look how big he is. And he's got the most beautiful... I don't know if you're allowed to touch. I could bring it over to show, though. You're nearer. I can bring it right over to show you. See, I haven't varnished it. See how beautiful that coat is. But look under there. This is all a big farce. You see, what do you think it might use these for, these horns? What do you think you use the horns for? You'd think so, wouldn't you? In fact, they use them as weapons. So if they see another beetle, a male beetle, what they'll do is they'll scuttle towards them first to try and scare them off, and then they'll get these horns and they'll go under the beetle and throw him in the air so he lands on his back, right across the rainforest, because he's come from Thailand. But if you look under there, you'll see that actually he's only got a tiny little face. It's all bluff. He's not really a hard nut.
You can't really see his face.
Can you see his eye? There.
Well, he has a pointy nose.
That's not his nose.
A tongue.
That's his horn. This is what he uses to fight with. Okay.
He looks angry.
I think he's putting it on. He was a very gentle beetle, actually. Yeah, I could hold him. He could fly. You see here? That's where the wings would open. They'd come out to about there. And when he flew around my office, he would sound a bit like a bumblebee, but really, really loud. But he was so heavy, he just used to plop onto the carpet. Yeah, pardon?
We have an office at 6.
I've got an office at the top of my house, and I've got all my animals in there, including all my beetles. And he flies around.
When he's dead.
No, it's another one. That's not him. Yeah, I've kept lots of them. He's still alive in his tank.
You should have brought him.
But you might not have liked it, and it might be a bit cruel bringing him on the tube. I didn't want to upset him.
It's a hospital. You should get better.
He's not ill. I was a bit late for that one. Do you want to see a beetle baby?
Yeah.
This might shock you a bit. That's a beetle baby. Now, the thing about beetle babies is this one grows absolutely huge. And I've got one at home at the moment, and he's bigger than my thumb. And he's just like that. He's got little pinchers on the front. And the other day, my friend wanted to see him. He's buried in the soil. So I got a spoon, very, very gently scraped the soil off. Suddenly, I couldn't move my spoon because he grabbed hold of it. And I pulled the spoon out, and he was hanging off the end, dangling, because he's got such strong pinchers. But it's going to take 3 years in the soil, eating flakes of bark, before he eventually makes a cocoon and becomes a beetle. We usually would have used gloves. Now, who have we got next? There we go. Now, you like that one, don't you? You don't? What do you think he is?
A guinea pig.
No, he's not a guinea pig. You look similar. He's just lovely. Do you know what he might be? He's not a hamster. He's a very special kind of rabbit. And he's called Sonny, but they call him a woolly lionhead rabbit. You can see why, because of this beautiful mane he's got like a lion.
You have his body.
Pardon?
You have his body.
His body? Do I have his body? No, he's still alive. He lives in my daughter's bedroom. Yeah, he runs around in there. We don't put him in a hutch.
Bring him.
Oh, I couldn't bring him on the tube.
Wow.
Well, health and safety. Health and safety. Could have taken a cab, I suppose. So that's Sonny. Now let's see who else I've got. Right. This is Betty. Betty, the gentlest snake in the world. Now, I used to work in advertising. I used to write commercials for things like sugar puffs and beer. And I used to work in London, so I had to get on the tube. And I used to take Betty with me. But because she's a reptile, she'd get really cold on the tube. So I used to get a little... Nah, they're quite calm, but I used to put a little bag around my neck and then tuck it down my jumper, and then I'd go to work with her in there so she could keep nice and warm. And then when I got to work, I would undo the bag and Betty would crawl round and round my arm and onto my head, because that was lovely and warm, and then she'd wind round my bun and go to sleep until somebody came into the office and startled her. Then she'd wake up, and they often weren't expecting to see somebody with a snake on their head, so they'd be a bit scared for a minute. But when they got to know her, they'd realise she was very, very gentle. And they used to bring her earthworms to eat and things like that. It wasn't poisonous, wouldn't constrict you, nothing like that. Just a really gentle snake. Now, I don't know if you know, but when snakes grow, their skin gets really tight and they have to take it off. And here's Betty taking off her skin. Can you see? She's slithered out all beautiful and fresh now, and the old skin's left behind on the tree. And that's it when it's completely out. Now, would you like to see a sloughed snake skin? Would you? I've got one here that belongs to a python. And it's very beautiful, actually. People go, oh, snakes are slimy, but they're not. And this is the skin. It's really quite long. Would you like to come out and hold the tail, please? I'm just going to show you how long this one is. Come on, Sinead. Right, you hold the tail that end.
And this is real.
And this is real. This is what the snake has taken off because it got too fat for its old skin. If we come here, you'll see, right, you've got the tail. So this is the python. And this would be the end of the python. This is where the head would be, you see. And this is where the tummy would be. So if it swallowed a mouse, this bit would be mouse-shaped until it went out the other end and came out and was digested. But that's not a very big snake. So I thought you might like to see my boa skin, would you? Much bigger. You're going to hold my boa skin for me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Right. Now then, this one's enormous. And it's still got a face. You might have to go over there, Sinead. Yeah. Right, it was actually longer than this, but when I got it, it was all crumpled up, because when the snake took its skin off, it rubbed itself all around the bushes and the logs it was in, and it was a horrible crumply pile. So I put it in the bath, lots of water, so it would float out and all the crinkles would come out. But what I didn't do, I didn't tell my husband it was in the bath. So he walked in and he thought there was a snake in there, but of course it's not, it's just the skin. But there was another sort of 2 foot on there. When I hung it up to dry, it sort of snapped. But there's the tail end. And then if I unravel it, you would see what a whopping great boa this is. There. And if you look here, this is the head. So if I was a mouse, that's where I would go in. And he wouldn't want something as little as a mouse for his dinner, would he? He'd probably want a deer. I don't know. And you can even see the little spectacles, little lenses come off as well. There, can you see? Still shiny. So snakes are amazing because unlike us, we can only open our mouths a little way. They can flip them right back like that. So they can get really big food inside. And their sharp teeth make it go all the way down there and you get a massive bulge. Snake like this, if you had a great big thing, if you ate a deer or something, you probably wouldn't need to eat for another year. Just sit there and digest it and go to sleep. What a life. There we go. Thank you. So there's my boa. Pardon?
Yeah, am I right to go?
You can go and sit down now. Thank you so much. Right. Now, I'm showing you some newts because we're going to have a story now about the creature on my apron, the bog baby. And this is very much a true story. And it all happened on a day when I went fishing for newts with my sister. So, there's my sister sitting on the swing. Who do you think that is in the pram? Yeah, changed a bit, haven't I, really? I don't know how old I was there. We were a bit older than that in this story, though. But that's the wood where this story happened. That's in Bluebell Wood in Marshalswick, where I was born. Does anyone know St Albans, just outside London? That's where I was born anyway. So, here we go. The story of the bog baby. And the illustration is by a lady called Gwen Millward. Long ago, when we were little, me and Chrissy, that was my sister, did something bad. We said we were going to Annie's house to play, but we didn't. We went fishing all by ourselves, which wasn't allowed. It wasn't allowed because there's a big main road, and my mum said, "You're not to cross that road on your own, not even with your sister." But my sister was a bit bossy, and she made me go. Chrissy said there was a magic pond in Bluebell Wood. It was only ever there in spring. And when it rained, it made a huge puddle in the dell, and pond creatures came. "We could fish for newts," she said. "I won't tell if you won't." We found the pond. It was squelchy round the edge. It had been raining, you see. And the bluebells squeaked under our boots. We fished and fished, but we didn't catch a newt. We caught something much better. We caught a bog baby. He was the size of a frog, only round and blue, and he had boggly eyes and a spiky tail, and I do remember that he had ears like a mouse. He came swinging through the flower stalks and jumped into the water. He floated up and down on his back and sucked his toes. Well, that's when I fished him out. He didn't struggle. He sat in my hand and looked surprised. He was as soft as jelly, like he had no bones. And when we stroked him, he flapped his wings. Well, they were no bigger than daisy petals. They seemed too small for him to fly. Well, Chrissy said, well, he might be able to fly if we blow on his wings. So we blew and we blew, but all we did was blow him onto the mud. He didn't try to escape. He just sat still with his paws over his eyes. We put him in a jam jar, took him home and hid him in the shed. He was our bog baby. He wasn't meant to be a secret. We wanted to show Mum, but we daren't, because if we did, she'd know we didn't go round to Annie's. We made our bog baby a beautiful home in a bucket with gravel and shells and clean water. And whenever he saw us, he jumped up and down. We picked him up and played with him. He was very ticklish. We gave him cake crumbs. Don't know why we did that. We loved our bog baby. Our friends loved him too. We used to sneak him into school in a margarine tub. And when the teacher wasn't looking, he played in the sandpit and the water tray. In the afternoon, he slept in his tub on a piece of damp cotton wool. It's very important that his cotton wool was damp because creatures like frogs and toads and bog babies have got slimy skin. And if they touch dry things, it makes them very uncomfortable. So he had to sleep in damp cotton wool. So we knew how to look after him just a little bit. Chrissy made him a collar and lead, and we took him for walks in the field. And once a crow nearly ate him, but we scared it away just in time. We took great care of our bog baby. At least we tried, but he got sick. He didn't jump up and down anymore. He went pale and his wings drooped. He wouldn't touch his cake crumbs. We gave him all sorts, but he just spat them out. We wanted to ask Mum for help, but we daren't because of Annie. But the bog baby got thinner. He wouldn't walk on his lead. He hid under his shell. You can see him peeping out. And he wouldn't come out, no matter how much we loved him. Mum found us in the shed. She wouldn't say why we were crying. We'd promised not to tell, but I blabbed. Mum wasn't angry though. When she saw who was in the bucket, she smiled and her eyes went all misty. She said she hadn't seen a bog baby since she was little. Please make him better, we cried. We love him so much. I know, she said, but the bog baby is a wild thing. He doesn't belong here. He isn't meant to eat cake or walk on a lead or sleep in a tub. She picked up the bucket and we followed her out. If we really loved the Bog Baby, we had to do what was best for him, no matter how much it hurt us. That was real love. And that's why we let him go. Back where he belonged, living in the woods, playing in the pond, and sleeping in the damp leaves under the moon. We never saw him again, but I think he grew up and had babies of his own. Because last spring, my daughter, there she is there, she's called Sylvie, she found the magic pond. And guess what she saw? Hundreds of bog babies swinging through the bluebells, catching flies, floating on their backs, sucking their toes. Well, that's what she told me. And that's what I believe. Later on, if you go to the classroom, we're going to make a model bog baby. I've got one here. I don't know who's coming to class today. Are you? Yeah? Maybe we could make one. So we're going to make one a bit like this. Okay. And if there was a real bog baby, I think that's just how he would look. The guy who made this model actually made the models for Star Wars. So I had a special one made that looked as real as possible. Okay. Now, let me see if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask me. Oh, you've got them there. Oh, people online. Okay, go on then. Yeah, and we ask you yours as well.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Okay, if I could have a superpower, I think it would probably be to talk to the animals, because I've got so many. At the moment, I'm fostering 5 hedgehogs. And these hedgehogs, one of them got beaten up by a dog, and another one, do you remember that awful hot spell last summer? It was so hot, wasn't it? And this poor hedgehog was found in Hoxton in London, collapsed in an alleyway. So I've been looking after him. And then there were 3 baby hedgehogs that were born late in the year. They were so tiny, they couldn't hibernate until I'd fattened them up. And now they're like this. They're really, really big. They're over 1 kilogram each. And they're all going to be released in the spring, let go, just like the Bog Baby. But I'd like to be able to talk to them and say, well, where do you really want to go? Do you want me to let you go in my garden or in the woods? Where do you want to go? So it'd be lovely to be able to talk to the animals, I think. Yes, next question.
You have lots of pets.
Yes.
But do you have a favourite?
Do I have a favourite pet? I've got a very, very funny cat. And also I have to say that the rat was one of my favourites just because they were just so clever and love to be with you. I can't have a dog because I've got my 2 cats, one very old ginger one, and she wouldn't appreciate a dog coming into the house. But the little rats were just, I had 2, and they were just the loveliest, gentlest creatures. Yeah.
What's your favourite book that you've written?
Oh, right. The favourite book that I've ever written is called Tadpole's Promise. And I'm going to read it a bit later for anyone who wants to stay. Or I'll just film it and you'll be able to see it later. It was written, do you know Tony Ross, the illustrator who does Horrid Henry and lots of other books with David Walliams? Well, I used to use him as my illustrator all the time, and this is my favourite book, just because I think the ending is really quite shocking. And also I loved the way that Tony designed the book, because it's about a tadpole and a caterpillar who fall in love. And instead of having the book up that way, he had it up that way, so that the caterpillar, who lives in the trees, could meet the tadpole, who lived in the stream below, very easily. So that was a very clever bit of design. Right, what's the next question, please?
What made you want to become a writer?
Right, what made me want to become a writer? Well, I could say it's because my sister didn't want to play with me very often. So I got a bit lonely sometimes. And also when you're a child, people are always telling you what to do, aren't they? And what to think and where to be. So I thought, well, if I create my own worlds, I can have power over all those things. I can control what my characters do. I can invent wonderful new worlds. And I never stopped doing it, really. Just carried on. Any more questions?
What's your favourite colour?
What's my favourite colour? My favourite colour, I think, at the moment is blue. Yeah. Why blue? Depends what it's on, actually. I like blue clothes and I like blue earrings, but I do like red lipstick and I like red flowers. What's your favourite colour?
Gold, silver, pink.
Gold, silver and pink. I love this. That's very nice, isn't it? Great colour. Yeah.
Where do you live?
Where do I live? Well, I don't want you all coming round, but I live in North London in a place called Palmer's Green.
I live in North London.
Do you? Ah, do you live near me, I wonder?
I live in Barnet.
You're in Barnet. Oh, I know Barnet very well. Yeah, I know that very well.
What's your favourite author of childhood?
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Inspired you or anything?
I wrote more books than I read when I was a little girl, but I really, really loved a book called Charlotte's Web. Have you ever read Charlotte's Web? No? It's a lovely story about a pig and a spider. And the other one I liked very much was Paddington. I just love Paddington, and I was so lucky because I got to meet Michael Bond, who wrote Paddington. Because, do you remember when the film came out? Have you all watched Paddington film? Haven't seen it? That's very funny. And I had to write a book to go with the Paddington story. And I met Michael Bond, who was the author, at a party. And he invited me to come round to tea with him. And it was such an honour because he was my favourite author. We had a really lovely time. And he used to be a cameraman for Blue Peter years ago. And also he kept guinea pigs. And they used to run round and they used to nibble his trousers to try and get the crisps he had. And he was the sweetest of men. Really, really lovely guy. Oh, last question. Yeah.
Final one. If you weren't an author,
Yes.
what would you be?
Oh, I think not a vet, but something to do with animals of some description. I'm not quite sure what. If it wasn't something to do with animals, I would arrange flowers. I'd do things with flowers because I've got an allotment and I grow all my own flowers and all my own vegetables in London. And I think flowers are so beautiful, aren't they? And you can do amazing art with them, really. You don't have to put just a boring old vase together. You can do. I make hats out of my flowers and things like that. It's great fun. Okay.